Hey everyone, my name is Horsefax and I work for Farcaster. I'm really excited to be here today, but I think it's 5 a.m. in New York right now, so hopefully I can come visit in person sometime. But I do want to say thanks to Taki and Amy for inviting me to speak today. So I'm here to share a little bit about Farcaster and what we've been working on building on-chain programmable social. So Farcaster is a sufficiently decentralized social network protocol built on Ethereum. This is what it looks like right now. It's a feed-focused, short-text social network. You can create a profile, follow people and topics you're interested in, and post text, images, links, and videos. Farcaster looks maybe a lot like Twitter, but it's purple. And if you squint, it might look a bit like Instagram or Facebook or Reddit too. It's built on the same primitives: your identity, your social graph, and text and media content. A huge reason I joined Farcaster, and I'm excited to work on it, is that I love Twitter. I've been a Twitter user for 17 years, basically my entire adult life. I've met tons of internet friends there, and I think my career in both tech and crypto wouldn't exist if I hadn't been on Twitter. My account traces my relationships and interests over 2 decades, and although I've never been good at keeping a journal or writing a blog, somehow I've always managed to tweet. It's not a stretch to say that my thousands of tweets are the primary written record of my life. But of course, they're not really mine. If my account gets suspended or deleted, that's all gone. And it's not possible for me to take my posts, my audience, or my follow graph to another platform. I'm old enough to remember when Twitter was different. Back before Twitter had a mobile app, I used a third-party app called Tweetbot. In 2017, I wrote an open source framework for building Twitter bots, which people use to post poetry and generative art and all kinds of creative projects on Twitter. And when I was learning to code for the first time, I built my own Twitter client as a learning exercise. These projects were all possible thanks to Twitter's open public APIs. Today, though, those APIs are all deprecated, disabled, or paywalled. So at Farcaster, we're building social networking as an open protocol. On Farcaster, your account and identity live on-chain as something you actually meaningfully own. Your data and social graph are stored and replicated on an open network of hubs that can't be shut down like a private API. And clients are designed from the ground up with programmability as a first-class feature. We want to guarantee that users own a direct relationship with their audience and that developers can always build apps on the network. I want to talk briefly about apps versus protocols. A big idea that guides the way we build Farcaster is something we call product-led protocol development. Product-led protocol development means that the same core team building the Farcaster protocol are also building a consumer-facing product on top of it. That's Warpcast, which is currently the main Farcaster client. Most of us who work on Farcaster work on both the protocol and the product at the same time. For example, I wrote the smart contracts that store your Farcaster identity on-chain, and I also work daily on the Warpcast mobile app. We think building the product and protocol together at the same time is critical to getting the design right. A bunch of apps are already built on top of protocols. For example, Gmail is built on email, GitHub is built on Git, Apple Podcasts is built on RSS, and Warpcast is built on top of Farcaster. We got to this viewpoint about product-led protocol development by working backwards from our end goal. We want to build an internet scale social protocol, so we need many independent apps and clients. If you want many independent apps and clients, you need developers. If you need developers, you need users. And of course, users don't use protocols, they use apps. So if your goal is to build a protocol, you should start by building the initial app on top of it. That's exactly what we're doing by building Warpcast. It's also not just about bootstrapping the protocol, but about discovering how it should work. I think building crypto protocols is kind of like building a space shuttle. The stakes are really high and the mission has to be clear. Every component needs to be carefully designed and very rigorously tested. You get one shot to launch and you hope that as soon as it's in flight, everything works exactly as you expected. I think this is one reason the most successful crypto use cases we've seen so far are financial. It's not just that crypto is inherently financial, but it's because these products are well known and possible to implement in smart contracts. We've been building things like lending markets and order books for a long time, and the shape of these products is pretty clear. Interesting innovation happens maybe in the way they work on chain, but not necessarily what they do or how they're designed. A social protocol, though, is completely different. We think we know a few of the core primitives, things like your identity, your social graph, and your posts. But the exact shape of a decentralized social protocol is something we need to discover iteratively through trial and error and experimentation, rather than design up front. Consumer social is fast and fickle. Probably 90% of the new feature experiments we try in Warpcast will fail. So it's just not feasible to start by writing them all into an immutable smart contract. Instead, we take a deliberate product-led approach. We experiment with new ideas first in the Warpcast client, where we can rapidly build and test new features. If those succeed, we figure out how to expose them to other clients and build them in an interoperable way, usually by building public APIs that any app or client can consume. And then finally, once the feature's been live for a while, once we understand it, once we know how we can decentralize it, we move it into the protocol. This means we still need to think up front to ensure there's a reasonable path to decentralization, but stepping back and rethinking this conventional protocol-first approach has served us well for building and iterating at the pace of consumer social. 2024 was a pretty big year for Farcaster. We had daily active users on the network grow roughly 30x between January and July. We're now sitting at something between 30 to 50,000 daily actives. This was a huge step function for the network. It's a ton of users for a consumer crypto app, and it's still super tiny compared to at-scale social networks. We've been focused on two major things this year. One is building programmable Legos for developers, and the other is creating what we call cozy corners for users. I want to share two examples today. One is Frames, which are interactive apps embedded in the Farcaster social feed. And the second is Channels, which are curated programmable spaces for communities. Farcaster has a bunch of different programmable surfaces, places and ways that you can build on top of the protocol as a developer. But the biggest one is probably Frames. Frames are a way for you as a developer to embed interactive apps in the social feed. If you're building a crypto app, it can be difficult to get distribution. Users have to find your app online, click a link, open a new page, sign in, connect their wallet, and only after all these steps can they do something that's actually interesting. Frames enable apps to embed calls to action and crypto transactions directly in the feed where the users are. We wrote the first Frame spec in January, and since then developers have built thousands of frames for all kinds of interesting applications. For example, apps like Rodeo, Zora, and MoshiCam built frames that enable you to mint and collect in feed. Every Polymarket link is a frame, where you can make a prediction in just a few taps. Every mirror or paragraph article embeds as a frame, where you can subscribe to the newsletter in one click, or even launch a mini app and read articles right inside the app. There are frame apps for organizing and managing events in the real world, and events online like meetups and audio spaces. There are frames for payments, subscriptions, and commerce. And this is just the surface. There are frames for polls, games, crowdfunding, tipping, swapping, and much more. Since it's possible to build these permissionlessly, we've seen people build all kinds of interesting and new and novel use cases with frames. Frames get even more interesting when you combine them with other programmable surfaces within Farcaster. For example, developers can build mini apps that interactively add frames from the cast composer. So you can create a poll with Ponder, search for a GIF to inserts, or share books, songs, and movies with Nook. Or you can launch a frame by clicking on a cast to take actions like translating, bookmarking, and tipping. This is kind of like building a browser extension for a social network or a programmable like button. Or you could send a frame in a direct message, like this event reminder on the left. All these Legos snap together to enable developers to extend the Warpcast clients in new and interesting ways. So frames and programmable social bring outside apps into the Farcaster feed, but it's just as powerful to bring your Farcaster social graph out of Warpcast and into other apps. Sign in with Farcaster is a standard that enables apps to use your Farcaster account for login, kind of like signing in with an Apple or Google account, but backed by your on-chain Farcaster identity. Since the social graph is open and public, this means that apps can find your friends and followers right away, solving the cold start problem for new social apps. Here are a few examples. Dracula is a TikTok-style short video app that launched on top of the Farcaster graph. Icebreaker is a professional network that extends the Farcaster graph with things like on-chain attestations and endorsements. And Zora and Rodeo are Instagram-like minting experiences that used Farcaster to help people find their friends and bootstrap follows. Optimism even used sign in with Farcaster for their retro grants portal this year. If you're building a consumer crypto app, accessing an open social graph like Farcaster means you no longer have to start from scratch. You can bring users into your app and help them find their friends immediately. Finally, there are alternative clients. Although it's early and Warpcast is still by far the dominant client, there are more than 10 alternative Farcaster clients. For example, Kiosk, which focuses on a first-class art and minting experience, Supercast, which embeds tipping and token features, and Nounspace, a highly customizable client built for the Nouns community. If you want to keep up with all the interesting things being built on Farcaster, check out the Explore tab in Warpcast by tapping the globe in the center of the nav bar. We have over 150 apps listed, and developers are building more every day. Our second major focus has been building what we call cozy corners for communities through a feature called channels. I think channels are a good case study of our iterative product-led approach. They're also the most challenging thing we've worked on this year. We spent a lot of time building out the core table stakes features of any social app in Warpcast. These are things like feeds, follows, and profiles. But channels are our first experiment with a new social primitive. If Facebook groups and Reddit had a baby, that's a channel. Channels started as public topic-based feeds, kind of like hashtags. We started with a few curated topics in Warpcast, things like music, Ethereum, and memes. And late last year, we opened channels up to the public. Although they're still a Warpcast-only feature, anyone can create them, and so far they've created over 13,000 channels. When the network had hundreds or thousands of daily users, channels were naturally cozy corners. But as the network has grown, we've had to iterate on tools for owners to scale quality, manage content, and build communities. Our first approach was pretty standard moderation tooling, just hiding the unwanted casts, but this was a lot of work for channel owners. So we tried something new and inverted the model. Instead of hiding bad content, we could curate good content into a channel feed. We built basic curation tools into Warpcast, but also opened this feature up to developers to create automated moderation tools. One standout tool you can see here was AutoMod, a pluggable moderation bot that supported highly customizable rule sets. Eventually, though, we found that this curation model wasn't quite working either. Although the tools were powerful and programmable, managing rules and sifting through spam was still too much work for channel owners. We're now trying our third iteration of channels. Just a few weeks ago, we took a big bet, we made a breaking change, and we converted these channels to membership-based communities. Instead of curating the content, owners now manage who can join and who can post. This was a big leap into something new, and we'll see if it pays off. One exciting thing about channels, though, is that they're programmable and composable just like the rest of Farcaster. Your channel membership can be token-gated, credential-based, rules-based, proof of work, invitation-only. It's up to you. And on day one of the new channel model, we had 10 different third-party tools available for owners to manage their communities. Today we have channels based around niche interests like poetry, sardines, walking your cat. We have channels based on on-chain communities like Nouns, Hire, and VIP. Channels for brands like Base and Zora. Channels organized around cities and places. And channels for events like DevCon and Each Global. The final step of channels will be decentralizing them, figuring out how to move their ownership on-chain, making them fully interoperable across clients. And we have a lot of users who've been eagerly awaiting this feature, but we had to navigate this mini idea maze to even start to understand the right shape. If we'd started at the protocol level, rather than experimenting with this in the Warpcast app, we certainly would have been wrong, and we might have been stuck with the decision. So I'm really excited about channels as membership communities, especially the opportunity for communities to onboard their users directly into channels. Okay, so what's next? We're thinking about a few things. First is making on-chain actions easier with a first-class embedded smart wallet. Jumping out of an app and into a wallet is still too high friction on mobile, and we think account abstraction is finally mature enough to build a seamless and self-custodial wallet experience. So we'll be working on this in December and early in the new year. Second is making frames even better. Frame developers have been super creative under very significant constraints, but frames can still be kind of clunky. If you use them, they can be a little slow. They can feel pretty difficult if you have a multiple-step workflow. So we're experimenting with embeddable mini apps that are fully interactive rather than limited to just an image and 4 buttons. In fact, we're very actively working on a new spec for Frames v2, and we just launched a developer preview this week. Here's a v2 frame for WoW, which is a token launcher app. And here's a new v2 frame for Yoink, an on-chain capture the flag game. So we have a lot of plans for v2. We're planning to add things like notifications, quick actions, a bunch of different ways you can launch and interact with v2 frames. And if you're a developer, you have access to the user's connected Ethereum wallets using a standard Ethereum provider. So I think this is going to be a great new model for building on-chain applications embedded directly in the Farcaster feed, which interact with the user's wallet. So this is a great time to get started on a v2 frame. If you're interested, find me on Farcaster or join the Frames v2 channel. Finally, a really interesting thing happening right now is interactions with automated AI agents. This is an area that's changing extremely fast. Maybe you've seen what's going on with Clinker this week. But I think it's really cool. The programmability of Farcaster makes it a fantastic place for AI-based agents that take on-chain actions. So here's one example. This is an AI bot that recently learned how to post bounties, how to send payments, how to interact with other bots on the network. And it didn't do this by using special developer APIs or using any kind of special tools. It did it just by learning how to use the same primitives, things like frames, things like replies, things like posting text on the network that other humans use. So I think this emerging behavior is super interesting, and it's a great illustration of programmable social. Building open, permissionless, composable tools means that developers can build new and interesting things that we never anticipated or designed for. So I'm super excited to see where this goes. There are tons of people experimenting with it on the network right now. And I know there'll be some talks later about building agents and building on base. And I think Farcaster is a great place to do both of those things. Cool. So if you'd like to check out Farcaster, you can find Warpcast in the App Store. Scan this QR code, download it, and get started. You can find me on Farcaster. I'm horsebacks.eth. And yeah, thanks to everyone. Appreciate the invitation and hope to see you on Farcaster. Thanks.